All right, what's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be going to a dyno and we're going to be running the stock throttle body against the Solar Performance ported throttle body. And we're going to see if there's any power gain in the throttle body for a ported throttle body, or Solar Performance's ported throttle body, I should say, over the stock throttle body at wide open throttle that we can see on the dyno. We're going to do all the throttle relearn and all that good stuff in between. We're going to have good cool down to keep from heat soak being a factor, and we're going to see what we can get done today. All right, we're getting them strapped down here. Huck's Racing, Goodwater, Alabama. Eric Hucks, great guy. If you're ever down here in this area towards south central Alabama, you can call this guy up right here. They got a website. It'll be in the comments or in the description below. I'll link the website to Hucks Racing. You can book dyno time right on the website. It couldn't be easier. It's out here kind of in the open, so it doesn't matter how loud your car is, how much exhaust fumes it makes. You can come here and get it dyno. So we're gonna get this thing hooked up and we're gonna make a couple pulls. We're gonna be comparing the factory throttle body with our Solar Performance unit, and we're gonna see if there's any power increase with a ported stock throttle body. Factory throttle body, big ass lip. Took the tube off just to shot this video for you. All right, so that was the first two runs that we got with the Solar Performance unit. We're gonna give it some cool down time and take a look at all the files and stuff. Solar Performance throttle body. Smoothens 5, Dyno Jet Dyno. All right, so what we're looking at here is Solar Performance's new throttle body design. So in their old design, they use half shaft. And their new design, the only change is they've taken the half shaft off of this side and they've notched right down in here for good throttle plate engagement. The back side's still going to be the same, with on their original, the back side was shaved down as well. They do this new design because this right here is the high flow side of the throttle body. In their testing, they figured out that when you're full throttle, 100% throttle, that the blade doesn't actually open up and become totally flat. It's angled still a little, and this right here would be the high side of your angle. So that's why they did this, to increase flow on the high side. So we're about to try and compare this throttle body to the new design, and we're going to see if there's any power difference or on the dyno at wide open throttle with this compared to this. here. Got good jumps here. We brought up the files from the original version and added in the files for the new version, and it looks like we gained almost 10 horsepower for the new version, and it gained almost everywhere. It's just a back-to-back changing of the throttle body itself. Under the curve. Yes. All right, so what we have here is, this is the original version of Solar Performance in green, and then our orange line is the new version. As you can see right here, we're gaining over 20 horsepower down here at the low end, and you spend a lot of time in this area here. So yeah, up top, you're not gaining a whole lot here, if any. I think they're about the same here, but you gain a little bit through here, and then just the whole curve on both sides, especially towards the low end, you're gaining a lot of power. And this is, of course, all wide open throttle pulls, and this is a direct comparison to their older version of throttle body to their newer version of throttle body. Here's what we have. We have the stock run, which is 6, which is going to be our red. And the run 10 in the blue is going to be the old version, or the original version of Solar. And the one in the green line here is going to be the new version of Solar. And what we see is it's generally the same. And what we found out from data logging is that the car itself in the tune is limiting the throttle position. So in the range where we should be gaining power with this throttle body, we're flowing a lot more pounds per minute of air through the mass airflow with the newer throttle bodies, but the factory tune is limiting the throttle position itself. All right, so today we went to the dyno and we did some testing on ported throttle body. All right, so we actually found out some pretty interesting results. I've got a little sheet here where we did some investigating on what exactly was going on. And we also data log using HP Tuner's data logging software to see exactly what's going on. So we data logged each run. And what we found out was we basically got a big increase in airflow using the Solar Performance throttle body. We went from around 80 pounds a minute on the regular stock throttle body at wide open throttle, of course, because that's all the dyno can test is wide open throttle, to around 85 pounds a minute on the current Solar Performance unit, and 85 to 86 at wide open throttle on the new half shaft design, which we'll get into that in just a second. We were wondering why the horsepower numbers weren't so different between stock and this, ported throttle body, considering, if you got more air and you add more fuel to that air, then you should have more power. So we got to investigating of why. And what we found out was the factory tune is limiting the throttle input. So what I have here is just some notes. The stock one limited the throttle to about 72% at wide open throttle, anywhere from, it would start somewhere around 2,500 to 3,000 RPM and go all the way up, in some cases, to 44 or 4,500 RPM. It would limit the throttle. It would be at 100%, and then it would drop it down into the 70s. Now, this is with the factory throttle body. So we originally found this with the Solar Performance ported throttle body. It actually limited to 67.5%. So the problem here, that's out of 100%. So the problem of what was happening is that the throttle was open at 100%, and with the solar unit at a certain RPM, it's seeing so much more airflow that it starts to close the throttle body, and it backs it all the way down from 100% to 67.5% during the run. And then shortly before red line, it lets it ramp back up to 100% for whatever reason. Okay, so when we went back to the stock unit again, we're like, okay, well, we got to try to see if all this stuff is repeatable. Went back to the stock unit, same thing. in the 70s, it'll reduce the throttle from 100% into the 70% range, so it closes the throttle off a certain percent. We went from the solar current unit to the half shaft solar unit, and we got increase in airflow between those two, just a pound or two an hour, a minute increase in airflow on the data log. So not a whole lot, but more air. And that's, again, just wide open throttle. Dyno only tests one wide ass open. That's all it'll test. But at wide open throttle, we went back to the stock throttle body again. Now, the temperature range of intake temperature, each pool I allow to cool down time in between each one with fans blowing. And my intake temperatures range from 68 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's the biggest jump. That's not from one run to the other. That's as the day went on, it went up to that. So towards the end of the day, we switched back to the stock throttle body again, and then back to the solar performance unit again on the higher temperature, and it's repeatable. It didn't really make a difference. So we factored all that stuff out. Now, it seems from what's going on here, it would not matter what ported throttle body you use. It would not matter what intake you buy or any of that stuff. Because in our experience, we spent over 4 hours on a dyno making multiple pulls and swapping back and forth, doing throttle body learn procedures over and over again, letting cool down time. We spent a bunch of time on this. The tune in the car will limit the power that's made. And I don't know if it's something that is looking at torque values and airflow at certain RPMs and it just tries to back off, or what it's doing, but the factory tune is limiting the car. And it's repeatable. Like I said, we didn't just go A, B, C. We went A, C, back to A, to B, to C, to A again, to B, to A, to C. We went all over the place. We swapped them all back and forth to try to make sure that they were repeatable results. And all the dyno graphs and data logs looked almost the same between each one of them. Very little difference. So it's really crazy that the car is limiting it. So what come out of it for me was, is a ported throttle body worth the money? Well, what are you buying the ported throttle body for? If you're buying a ported factory throttle body to gain horsepower at wide open throttle, you're really not making smart decisions. Is there power there to be gained at wide open throttle? Yes, because the flow is so much more. You're looking at 5 to 7 pounds per minute of air more with the solar ported throttle body than you were with the factory throttle body. But the reason that it's not reflected in horsepower numbers is because the factory tune is closing the throttle body during the pull. It's going from 100%. Like I said, it closes it down to 67.5% with the solar throttle body because of the increased airflow. Now, what we did find out with the half shaft design going up to 47 pounds per minute of airflow at part throttle with that unit is where the most difference would be in airflow in solar's testing on flow bench and here on the dyno. The reason we know that is because it's going too much for the ECU. So if you want the half shaft design from solar, that, by the way, I was the test mule for to see how it would work with drivability. Without it being tuned, it just flows too much air. That's simple. There's no other way around. We repeated it over and over again. It would throw a code for a throttle position, basically saying that for what throttle position your foot was at and how much air was coming through, it freaked the computer out. It was saying, well, there's way too much air passing through for this throttle position. It threw a code, it goes into limp mode. And that's just about 2 pounds per minute of air, which is, I mean, it is a good bit of air. It's a good percentage increase over their normal unit. Now, their normal unit, if you were to tune the car, you're gonna gain a lot out of both of these over stock. You're gonna be able to gain a lot more power with these two ported with a tune over stock. It's just with their half shaft design, the new design, you're gonna have to tune for it to get good drivability because there's so much more airflow at part throttle. At 30 to 50% throttle with that throttle body, you're seeing airflow numbers that you would normally see at 60 to 70% throttle, and it blows the computer's mind. I did switch back to the original model. Like I said, the mass airflow, you're reading at about 85 pounds a minute at wide open throttle, and that's the max of how much air would go through it. That's the highest number. It's about 80 pounds a minute on stock. So you're looking at a fairly good increase of airflow at wide open throttle. It's just not reflected in horsepower numbers because the computer is closing the throttle valve. Showed in the video the dyno sheet between the Solar Performance regular unit that I've been running and the stock throttle body, and the dyno numbers are almost exact. I mean, they're right there intertwined with each other. You really didn't pick up that much. Now, why do you buy a ported throttle body? Well, for me, it was drivability concerns of park throttle and that dead spot. So does the solar unit get rid of the dead spot right off the idle? 100% does. It is much more fluid. I had a conversation with a guy this afternoon, Mike from Solar Performance, and he talked about the design of the air channels that are cut into the body and cut into the blade, and how they maximize airflow and velocity at park throttle. Once you get past about 30-35% throttle, those don't really do much, is what he told me. So that's where most of your drivability is coming from, is right there off idle to about 35%. And that's where you spend most of your time driving. You don't drive around with your foot planted on the floor all day long. Most of your driving is going to be low to mid RPM range. That's a fact, unless you're at the drag strip every day. And if you're looking for max horsepower at wide open throttle because you're at the drag strip every day, then you need to just go ahead and buy either the 95 millimeter ported and get a tune, or the 103 millimeter and get a tune. That's a simple fact about it. So anyway, that was my findings for the Solar Performance unit. Now, as far as how it compares to other manufacturers, I don't know, but I could pretty well bet money that it doesn't matter what throttle body you put on there. If the car's back in the throttle down, it's looking for a certain torque value and it's looking for a certain pounds per minute value, and it's trying to get to that number, and how it's doing it is it's closing the throttle blade. So we did pick up a lot of airflow. The Solar Performance unit, just like on his website, flows a lot more air, multiple data logs, but that's just what it is. So should you buy one? I would. I want to keep mine. I love the way it drives. It makes it feel a lot better driving. It's more linear. Like even going up, there's a mountain here that I go up that's a pretty steep grade, and when I'm pulling that mountain, the factory throttle body, it almost feels jerky going up the mountain. But with the solar unit, that's a lot less pronounced, if you even feel it at all sometimes. So it does make a vast improvement over the drivability of the car, and it does increase the airflow pretty substantially over the stock unit. So if you wanted the half shaft model, it will be for sale soon, and it would require a tune in, the LT4 cases. I've heard of some people in the SS that aren't supercharged, the regular natural aspirated SS models, putting a 95 millimeter ported throttle body on and not needing a tune and just driving around with it and not throwing a coat. So, I mean, their tuning is, much different, of course, than what the LT4, because it's not supercharged. So it may work for them. I don't know. It may be a better throttle body for naturally aspirated and need tuning on the LT4. Somebody that's got an SS will have to do some testing with that to find out. But in my case, with the LT4 on the ZL1, I'm going to stick with the original solar unit because it works the best. It's the smoothest throttle. I could even tell the difference going back to the factory throttle body and then going back to the solar unit on the dyno. You can tell the difference of starting off on the dyno and accelerating up into fourth gear on the dyno. I mean, it was crazy. I really didn't expect to see that. So a lot of time went into this, a lot of money on the dyno. Solar Performance footed the bill for the dyno, and they never, and still to this day, have never really wanted to claim that their throttle body increases horsepower at wide open throttle. They don't claim that it does. They never have claimed that it does. That was me that thought they would, but I was wrong. No throttle body can make more power on this car with the factory tune because it's going to limit the throttle blade. So Big shout out to Solar Performance, great company. Mike's a great guy. A lot of time, a lot of engineering went into his product, and a lot of R&D, and just the simple fact that he would reach out and let me do these tests and still say, hey, yeah, go ahead and post what you found on YouTube, because I never said that it would gain more power at wide open throttle. That tells you they're a straightforward company, and they're not trying to fluff and blow smoke up your butt. Most of their gains are going to be right off of idle and up to about 35% of throttle. Okay, so they gain more power. It's just the factory computer is limiting it. If you know of any reason of why it's, if you're a tuner and you know why it's closing the throttle body, or you know some table in the tune that says, hey, we're looking for this torque value at this RPM, and that's why the computer's backing it off, then chime in, leave me some comments, give me some suggestions, and let us know, because Solar wants to make the best possible product, and I believe that they have, as far as what they're trying to go for, and that's smoothness of throttle, smoothing the airflow out, and getting it from 0 to about 35% throttle, where you spend most of your time at while you're driving. So, thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more videos.